content. Our next one is voice search, okay? More and more of us are using voice search every day. It's becoming the norm, right? We talk to our devices. We have Hey Google for any Google devices or for your Android devices, Siri for your Apple devices, Alexa for your, a lot of those home devices that you have in house, Cortana for those that may be using Windows devices. I know I even have an Alexa car device. It's in my car and I talk to Alexa in my car. And so more and more of us are talking to these devices. And when we do talk to our devices, we tend to use more natural language, right? We tend to ask more question-based things, whereas if you were just on the computer or before we had voice search and you wanted to find a nice pizza place near you, you might just say pizza place near me, or, pizza, where can I get pizza? Pizza store, Tampa. But when we're dealing with voice search, we tend to ask more natural language questions, right? We say, hey, Google, where can I find the best pepperoni sliced pizza in the Tampa Bay area? And they tend to be more long form in the question as well. And so a little tip that you might want to consider trying is try changing some of the headings on your pages to questions that people are asking. Or if you do have some long form content, I also like to tell people, maybe if you have a long piece of content, but maybe you're first talking about signs of issues with your dog. Maybe, what are the signs of dog problems that you may need to deal with? How about a secondary heading as you're looking through your website, as you sort of change topics within that document? Have a second heading, a secondary heading, and try to use those questions that people may be asking and then answer them below that. And then you might find that these long form questions that people are asking within search using their voice search devices, you may start seeing your site ranking a bit better. Remember, it's all about the searcher intent, right? Provide the best information that answers your users' questions as fully as possible and gets them to understand that you know what they're dealing with and you know how to help them fix it, make it better, whatever, solve their problem. You can see here some of these quick stats, a little bit of an older slide. I couldn't find anything much newer than this, and it was nice enough. But by 2020, we're talking about 50% of all searches will be voice searches. I'm sure it's a bit more by now. 2 in 5 say voice-activated devices are essential to their lives. I'll give you an example of that. So I was away in Atlanta the last week for some time. And I have Alexa devices, I mentioned, in my room, in other parts of my house, in my car. And there were a couple of times where I'm in Atlanta, I'm like, Alexa, what's the weather in Atlanta today? It's just become so natural. So it's just a part of my everyday world that, I almost was asking questions of a device that didn't exist in the room that day. You see here, 19% of people use Siri at least once a day. And those using voice search on a daily basis. Teens are more likely than the adults, but adults are catching up pretty quickly too. Like I said, more and more of us, as we begin to use these things, we're beginning to see how easy it is, how effective it is, and how impactful it is on our lives. So you can optimize for voice search by doing targeting phrasing, right? The way that someone phrases a typed query is different than a verbal query. Kind of mentioned that, right? Somebody may type in best hiking boot brand, but verbally they're going to ask it more as a question. What's the best hiking boot brand for whatever? Optimizing for those verbal searches is a great way to target that conversational keyword. And that goes back to the tip of putting some questions into your content, whether it be headings or just questions within the content itself. And then, kind of ask the question and answer it. So to answer the best hiking boot query, you may have a short blurb highlighting the top brands and diving into more detail later on. And consider also the vernacular of things, right? Different regions have specific phrases they use to describe objects or places. People who live in the state of Pennsylvania typically call it PA. Knowing the vernacular can help you optimize for more conversational keywords. I often talk about, I'm in Florida, and people often say Central Florida, right? Or Gulf Coast or Space Coast, but there's no actual place for those things, right? In the New York metro area where I used to live, people would say the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, called the tri-state area. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, that area up there in Minnesota, they call it, the Twin Cities. So know your vernacular, know how people search for things, and use that within your content to help, again, with people doing more of this conversational search.